We'll see if we can get going, I suppose. We are on Chafalaf Amud Aleph, and I'll tell you where we are. It's in the long lines, and it should be the fifth long line. Tani Rami Bar Chama. Let me make sure that's what we're up to. Correct.
That's where I have Mark. So
right. Okay. Good. So this is the segue into talking about Hanukkah, about whether the types of wicks and the types of oils that we use or cannot use on Friday night for Shabbat candles are going to have an application to what we can use for Hanukkah candles or not. And then you'll see that there are three different opinions, one perfectly on time. Chafalaf Amud Aleph on the fifth long line. We're just starting at the two dots. Tani Rami Bar Chama. Okay? So Rami Bar Chama says, Tilot, okay? Tilot ushmanim she'amru chachamim ein madlikim bahem b'Shabbat, ein madlikim bahem b'Mikdash. Okay, so this I kind of jumped the gun. This I said it's Hanukkah. Hanukkah is going to come up in a few lines. This is about the Beit Mikdash. 21A, fifth long line, okay, from the bottom. From fifth long line, it's about maybe 10 lines from the bottom. 21A. Did I say 25A? 21A. Chafalaf Amud Aleph. Try it again. Tani Rami Bar Chama. Psilot u'shmanim shema chachamim im madlikim b'Shabbat, im madlikim b'Mikdash. So Rami Bar Chama says that the wicks and oils that you can't light on Shabbat, you cannot use in the Beit Mikdash. This is for the menorah that was used in the Beit Mikdash, which of course we believe we see on the Arch of Titus, though it is. Just want to say it's by no means 100% that is the menorah. Right? It likely is.
The bottom is not right.
The bottom is not right. We know the bottom is not correct. And nowhere is it identified as the menorah, but we assume it is because that's why they're schlepping it, though it has been pointed out there were various different candelabras throughout the temple to create illumination. Right? And as you know, the Chabad and the Lubavitchers have a menorah that is more triangular in shape rather than curved. But it's likely.
Well, we know that the first menorah, clearly that's not the one that was in the original Beit HaMikdash.
Correct.
A whole different description, right? But the second Beit HaMikdash, is there any description of when they were designing it? I don't think so.
No, there are no pictures. There's no picture.
Correct. So description.
Correct. So I'm saying all that we know is it makes sense. It seems to fit the description, and it does have 7 branches. It does have the round things like the pomegranates and the bells and everything. But
I think the coins, there were pictures of the menorah. The old coins in Judea.
And the old coins, possibly, yes.
But
Someone told me in the burnt house there's a picture of the menorah in the old city, but it was closed when I was there this summer. I couldn't get in. They were doing renovations. They were, I guess, trying to clean up the burning. They were trying to. I'm just kidding.
The modern state of Israel decided it's good enough.
Right. Agreed. Okay. The base that doesn't match is probably, if it is the original menorah, as we probably believe it is, then it's likely that the base was broken in the pillaging of the temple, and they kind of grafted, I should say, a different base just to give it stability to schlep it all the way to Rome. Okay, so at any rate, this is the menorah in the Beit Mikdash. You can't use these kinds of wicks and these kinds of oils. Shinemar lahalot ner tamid. As the pasuk says, it shall be a continual light, tamid, which was, by the way, our ner tamid is, of course, set up in the basic Knesset. It really represents the fact that the menorah was lit and burnt the entire night, and we believe the one candle, at least the ner ma'aravi, which is not clear, was the western one. It may have been the middle lamp, burnt all the way, even on the longest night, all the way till the morning. So, hu tani lavahu amalah. So, Rabbi Bar Chama brought this braita, and he explained it. What does that mean, tamid? Kedei shetei shall have that the shalhevet, the flame that comes up out of this menorah, shall come up by itself. In other words, the wick will be strong enough and consistent enough to pull up the flame, and you won't need to create a different type of mechanism to help draw the fuel up through the wick. So therefore, there shouldn't be a deficient. So it can't be deficient in either the fuel, which would be difficult to be drawn up through the wick, or the wick material itself. Okay, so therefore, the same way that we're concerned about what the oils and the wicks will be on Shabbat, which is a concern about doing malacha that we shouldn't reach over and bend and fix and it'll go out and everything else, would be the same thing in the menorah. It should be self-standing and self-fueling. or self-combusting. Tanan, we have a Mishnah in Masechet Yoma. It says, "Mivloi mechnasei kohanim umehamnehem hayu mafkiin umehem madlikim simchat beit hashoeva." They would take the leftover michnasayim, the breeches, or the pants of the kohanim, and wearing with the ties on them. They would undo them, and they would use these for the wicks on the menorah. This is one of
cotton, probably.
well, questions what they're made of.
Wool.
No, the ordinary kohanim. What does it say?
Well,
Ordinary beggar.
Doesn't matter.
Kohan, isn't Aaron's sons? They had like regular kohan begadi. Right? Not the kohen gadol. Sure.
So, and what would be the concerns? So this could be made of semer, wool, and we had said that they would not use. They wouldn't use this for the wicks. For we said one of the things you cannot use, and this was the previous piece of what we did last time, was you can't use wool and you cannot use goat's hair. So even if it's combined between wool and, let's say, linen, there still is a wool content. So you see that they would use this for, they would reprocess these garments in some form to make them into wicks. So how could they do this for the Beis Hamikdash? It says it has to be self-contained, fueling itself. It doesn't need to be, can't have any kind of assistance. So the Gemara answers that this Mishnah, which is talking about using these leftover parts of the Kohanim, is talking about Simchat Beit HaShoeva Shiny. This is about not the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. This is using for the Simchat Beit HaShoeva, which they use to light lamps all around the temple and all around Yerushalayim to give additional light. They said there was no house in Yerushalayim that was not illuminated by the lights that were lit up for the Simchat Beit HaShoeva. So consequently, this was not a concern. If those went out, big deal, right? It was all over. It's like if one street lamp goes out, you call the public works, right? But if the whole city goes out, it's a problem. What's
wrong with wool? I missed that.
Wool is going to singe. Wool is not going to be a good wick.
Doesn't suck it up. Or is
and when the fire grabs a hold of it, it's going to singe. So it singes more. So as a result, wool was considered to be a less than perfect fiber for using for wicks on Shabbat.
So commentary here, wish I could read it out, but he says since the Kohanim couldn't have dirty clothes and they couldn't, sounds like they might not be able to get rid of them or something. So maybe if they got dirty, ayu motziim, gadim l'shimush b'tilot. So it sounds, I don't know. So I should read it more slowly after.
So in other words, they would basically when the clothes would wear out, they couldn't wear clothes. The clothes got dirty and clothes got worn. They didn't patch them up.
Yeah, well, you can't use them for chol. I think he said.
Correct. Right.
You can't use them just for.
Right. So therefore, they want to use them for something holy. It's like very similar to what we do. What do you do with your leftover lulav? You use it for burning the chametz. Mm-hmm. Correct. There used to be a minhag. They told me of making bread kugel. Anyone ever hear this minhag of making bread kugel? That the leftover challah, I've never seen this, but I read about it, I think, I don't recall, maybe in Eliel Kitov. The leftover challah from Shabbos, what would you do with it?
Make a kugel out of it?
So they make a kugel in it for next week. So you recycle it.
You have to have a lot of challah left over.
Or you have to mix it in with something else.
No, but I make a bread pudding.
Correct.
Nothing to do with Shabbos, but if there's leftover, not every time there's leftover. But
right.
Occasionally,
but the bread pudding was made for next Shabbos.
I hear
That wasn't made for Sunday morning. Okay, it was.
I made it for
it's
a dessert. You can make a nice.
Correct. Yeah. Right. So all these things are once again we try to recycle these. Everything halachically tries to recycle everything that we have. All right. And as a result, when something is holy, you kind of try to use it as best as possible. Okay, if not, you have to treat it with respect, which is of course why we have shemos, which you can bury. Right. By the way, you don't have to bury shemos in the cemetery. You can bury them in your backyard if you want. People don't know that. When you're mulching for next year, you could use shemos. I'm not sure if it's really good for the ground. It might be lead-based ink. So, but otherwise,
says plants can't use lead. Maybe it doesn't bother.
We did that years and years ago. And we dug it up, and it didn't really rot out. It was safer.
The Sefer?
The book, whatever it was.
Okay.
I remember it.
We have to keep it a long time, I suppose.
No, it was
All right, whatever, okay. There you go. So leave it alone. You should put it back in and now check it. Put a time capsule with it too. Okay. So anyway, so the first answer is, the Gemara's answer is, we're dealing here not with the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, we're dealing here with the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. This is not the same menorah, it doesn't have the same requirements. You can use cruddy kinds of wicks, cruddy kinds of oils. It's really about utilitarianly, practically making sure that Jerusalem was lit up. So if you had one poor wick out of many, that's not a problem. It's not about Shabbat, and it's not about the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Now the Gemara says, well, we have another one. Toshma, the Tani Rabba Bar Marmasna, big day. Look at this, big day kahuna shabalu. This is the same, almost the same thing. This is not mechnasei kohanim and mehemneim. It's the big day kahuna shabalu that wore out. It's a brisa. Mafkiin osam, you kind of take them apart. Umehen osin psilot lemikdash, and you make them for wicks for the Beis Hamikdash. So once again, this is garments for the kohanim were made for tzemer. They were made from techeles. Techeles was wool that was colored blue, right? It was made from other fabrics as well. So you see that they're going. So my love, the kilayim. This must be, for example, like the avnate, which was the belt, which was made of wool and linen together. So you see that would make sense that you had a belt, like a gartel type of a belt. So that would be a perfect thing to make for some kind of wick. And you see, therefore, that you're using the wool made of the fiber, the wick made of wool. So the Gemara says, no, it's not true. Load the boats. We're talking about specifically the big day kahuna that were made from linen alone. Boats is linen.
Linen is good.
And linen is good, right? Linen is good. In fact, we said that the Mishnah later on in the Perek, which we haven't gotten to, says the only thing that can come off of a tree that can be used is really going to be linen. It's going to be both pishtan, right?
I think cotton was invented.
Cotton was not really invented, correct? It wasn't commercially.
Found in the world.
Or at least it wasn't commercially available, correct? It wasn't really available in the ancient world. So as a result, this otherwise they would use things like hemp. Hemp they used, okay? They use hemp. And that's why there's a whole listing of what wicks are good or what wicks are not good. Okay, so this was the segue to leave Shabbos to go into other topics. We went from Shabbos into the Beis Hamikdash, and now, I misspoke, I said earlier we're going to go into Hanukkah, now we're going to move into Hanukkah. So in Hanukkah, for the Beis Hamikdash, you clearly could not use the same rules for Shabbat, wicks and oil are going to apply, as the same thing will apply for the Beis Hamikdash. The only exception is not the Beis Hamikdash, but in terms of actually the Simchas Beis HaShoeva. By the way, Tosos seems to ask that if you can't really use holy material, holy begadim, you have to recycle them. How can you use it for Simchas Beis HaShoeva? That's not really holy. That's not like a carbon. It's not like a part of the avoda. And so the Tosas basically says that, you know what, it was similar to it. It was allowed to allow the Beis Hamikdash to work. It would create illumination. It was for the cover of the karbanos, for the cover of the Beis HaShoeva. So therefore, it's really considered good enough. Okay, so even though it's a denigration, it's still within the purpose of using something for sacrosanct. But it doesn't necessarily need the wick does not have to be as holy, as meticulous as it is for the Beis Hamikdash, for the menorah. Okay, Amar Rav Huna, 3 lines to the bottom. Here comes Hanukkah. This is like Christmas in July. Amar Rav Huna, Psilos u'shmanim shema chachamim em adlikim b'Shabbat, em adlikim b'hen b'Chanukah, bein b'Shabbat, bein b'chol. Okay, so according to the first opinion, there'll be 3 opinions. All of the above, some of the above, none of the above. According to the first opinion, whose opinion is Rav Huna, that the Neiros of Chanukah, of Shabbos, that you cannot use the wicks and the oils for Shabbat, that you cannot use on Shabbat, you cannot use them for Chanukah as well. Neither for Bein b'Shabbat, Bein b'Chol. Neither for Shabbat, and neither for weekdays.
Right.
Okay? What's the implication? Why not?
Just can't. That's it.
Well, so
maybe again.
you just can't. Well, you
Even
can't.
in the Beis Hamikdash.
Not Beis Hamikdash.
But I'm saying when we said before, so Shabbat, we were worried you're going to adjust it. So first of all, they could do things in the Beit Hamikdash and Shabbos that you couldn't do in regular places, so I don't know.
So let's leave the Beis HaMikdash out. Let's talk about Shabbat. Let's leave the Beis HaMikdash, which is a special area. Let's talk about Shabbat. So Shabbat, you can't use wicks that'll flicker, and you can't use oils that don't provide a clear light.
Yeah.
So why would Rav Huna make the application to Hanukkah? There are two implications. There's two reasons that support this. Because he says you can't do this for weekday, lighting menorah, Hanukkah menorah, and you can't do this for lighting the Hanukkah menorah on Shabbat. So the first implication is that you could use the light of the Hanukkah candles. Not what we do. Don't try this at home. This is not what we follow the halacha. We say ve'ein lanu reshus lahishtamesh b'hem. We cannot use the light of the Hanukkah menorah. In fact, what do we have? We have a shamash, correct? But the implication of what Rav Huna is saying is that he believes, this opinion believes, you actually can use the Hanukkah menorah light for illumination. Ergo, therefore, if the light flickers, or the light is poor, or the oil is not coming up clearly, so what will you tend to do? You'll tend to adjust it, okay? Or it's not going to work.
What's wrong with that? He said you could do it on. He said you can't do it on a coal either.
So you see, so therefore, in other words, because you want to have light, that you can actually will be a clear light. So in other words, you're right. So you could, but the implication is for the kedushas and neiros, you could use this light, and therefore you want to make sure the light that you have is not going to go out. You'll be frustrated. What about Shabbat? So Shabbat. What happens if the candles go out on Shabbat? Well, let's see in a moment. Let's read what Rav says. My time with Rav Huna. Kasavar kavsa zakuk la umuta l'shtamish la'ora. So Rav explains that l'chadchila you want to have a good flame.
What's kafta mean? I'm sorry.
If it goes out. Okay, so I'll just explain it again. Kasavar kafta, if the light goes out, if the candles go out, you have to really make sure that you relight them to burn through. So therefore, ideally, you want to light them to last the entire time of the wick and of the oil, because if it goes out, you must relight them. We don't necessarily paskin like this. If you light a Hanukkah menorah and everything is set to go, and it happens to blow out or something occurs, you do not need to relight them in order to fulfill the mitzvah. Custom is you would go back and light them, but you don't have to.
Like after half an hour, you don't have to.
Correct. I'm saying, but it has to burn for half hour. But the rule is, even if it does go out and it didn't burn for a half hour, right? You owe to the mitzvah. If it had the potential to burn for a half hour, okay. Not if you had a birthday candle, right, which lasts for 2 minutes. That's not worth it. But you had enough oil and everything. So therefore, because you have to make sure it burns for the requisite amount of time, you want to make sure that you have wicks and oil that will burn properly, correctly, and smoothly. And that's the first thing. And second of all, l'muta l'shtamish la'ora, says Rava. And therefore, if on Shabbat it were to flicker, what would you want to do? You would start to adjust it. So because you can read by the light of the Hanukkah menorah, you can use that light. So in other words, what Rava, we don't paskin like this.
Oh, I see.
Okay, do not do this at home. This is the first opinion. Okay, right? Here we go. So I'm going to give you a little handout here. Right now, I just want you to look at the chart on the bottom of the page. Just actually, sorry. Can you get it? Or I'll get a few. Okay.
According to Rav Huna, does it have to burn more than a half hour?
According to Rav Huna, it would have to burn whatever you lit it for would have to burn, correct. Even if it's more than a half hour, it looks like. The light has to burn out. It appears to be even more than a half hour, doesn't it?
Says you relight it.
Yeah, you have to relight it, correct.
The reason for having a Shabbos?
That's right. So I'm saying we do not follow the opinion of Rav Huna halachically. There are three opinions. And just to work you through this, it's on the bottom of this chart. This is, by the way, Murph, this is from Steinsaltz.
Yeah.
You'll see it on the bottom of the page there, the bottom of the next page? Maybe the bottom of the next page.
I'm not going to look.
Okay. All right, anyways, the stuff on top we'll get to it. We'll leave the chart on the top for now. Okay, but Rav Huna is saying, in other words, if you follow the Shita, Rav Huna says that the purpose of the Hanukkah candles has no kedusha whatsoever. There's no intrinsic holiness to the kedusha of the Hanukkah menorah. Not like we say. So why do we light Hanukkah candles? To make some kind of hecker, make some kind of awareness of what Hanukkah is, right? In other words, but really, there's no intrinsic holiness to the kedusha of the candles. As a result, if you can use them, you can use the light of the Hanukkah menorah, and if they go out, you need to relight them. Consequently, that's why you follow this chart of going across in the top where Rav Huna says, consequently, if they go out, kavta zakut law, if they go out, you have to relight them. And second of all, for the kedusha of the neiros, you can use them. And consequently, for the adlakas and neiros, from material that chomrim groim, from poor materials, poor wicks and poor oil, it is prohibited for Shabbat and prohibited for weekdays. Prohibited for Shabbat because you will use it for reading, and if it goes out or flickers, you will tend to move it on Shabbat. You'll transgress Shabbat. And weekdays, you want it to burn the entire time, so therefore you want to have quality A1 plus quality oil and A1 plus quality wicks. Make sense so far?
Yeah.
Whose opinion is this?
Rav
Rav
Huna.
Huna. So according to Rav Huna, what works or doesn't work for Shabbat works or doesn't work for Hanukkah. It's the same thing.
Right.
Once again, this is not what we follow halachically. So as I said, don't go home and try this at home. We have two more opinions. That is opinion number one. Turn the page over. Did I skip a word?
No.
Rav Chisda, sorry, last line, I did skip a word. Rav Chisda Amar, Rav Chisda is the second opinion, says, Madlikim bahem b'chol, avalo b'shabbat. According to Rav Chisda, you can light these poor wicks and poor oils on weekdays, but you cannot use them for Hanukkah candles on Friday night.
Right.
So in other words, to kind of make the analogy, for weekdays, it's fine to use cruddy oil. It's fine to use, and I know you want to use olive oil, right, or paraffin. We use that because that's a good oil. Those are good fuels. But let's say you didn't have it. You want to use kerosene, which is a sputtering kind of fire. It doesn't give a good flame, or some of the other oils that we talked about in the Mishnah, or some of the wicks that don't really work well. So for a weekday, that's okay. What would be the reason? Because if it goes out,
You'll just light it again.
or you don't have to light it.
Right.
Not just you light it again, you don't have to light it. So you're not worried if you light it and it sputters out. Okay, who died? Go ahead. Tomorrow night's another night. Shabbat, on the other hand, if you can use, because Rav Chisda will say that you can read by the light of the menorah, of the Hanukkah menorah, right? Not like we say. Consequently, Friday night, Shabbat, which you're using for Hanukkah candles, you could not use that cruddy kind of oil in case it goes out, or in case it flickers, because you'll tend to want to adjust it on Shabbat, which you can't adjust Shabbos candles. You can't adjust it because Shabbat. So I'll read again. Rav Chisda Amar Madlikim em b'chol avalo b'Shabbat kasavar. What's his reason? Kavsa ain't zakuk la. If it goes out, you don't have to relight it. Therefore, on weekdays, it's okay to use the cruddy, poor kind of oil and wick. Abal b'muta l'shtamish liora, but you can use the light to read by from the Hanukkah menorah, not like we paskin. Consequently, Friday night you can't use it. So once again, if you go back to this handy dandy little chart and you read Rav Chisda going right across, Rav Chisda says the mitzvah is to use and make a zechel nes. However, the candles do not have any sense of a kedusha, so I can use them. So consequently, if it goes out, you don't have to relight them. You can use them the light, and therefore on Shabbat it's asur, and on weekday it's mutar. That's choice 2. Okay, choice number 3, or opinion number 3. Amar Rav Zera, this is Amud Bet, the second line. Amar Rav Masna, this is Rav Zera. Svi Amile Amar Rav Zera Amar Rav, either Rav Zera name Rav Masna, Rav Zera name of Rav. Petilot ushmanim shamu chachamim ein madlikim bahem b'Shabbat, madlikim bahem b'Chanukah. The wicks and the oils that you cannot use on Shabbat, you can use on Hanukkah, bein b'chol, bein b'Shabbat. Whether it's a weekday or whether it's Shabbat.
Any oil at all.
Any oil at all. I know you're going to say, but you go out and you need a way to buy olive oil. Good for you. Very nice. Okay, but if you didn't have olive oil, you could do that. Right? If you wanted to use butter. Right? All kinds of stories in the concentration camps. People would get a slab of butter and save the butter. Or margarine. I don't know what they would get. Probably butter. And they would save the potato. They hollow out a potato and put a little margarine for the first night of Hanukkah, and they used to light one candle. This is people who really tried very hard to keep a mitzvah in the camps. So that's what they get. They would starve themselves, right? Not just they would starve themselves, they would take real risks, because if you didn't eat what they gave to you, right, that was a capital offense. So they'd have to sneak back a potato back to the barracks and sneak back some butter. I don't know how you sneak back butter in your pocket, but they did it. So, Tilo to Shmarim Shama Chachamim Madlikim Em Shabbat, Madlikim Em Chanukah, Bein Bechol Bein Shabbat. And Rabbi Yirmiyah says, my time of the Rav. What's the reason of Rav? Kasavar Kavsa Ein Zakuk La. If the lights go out, if the candle goes out, you do not need to relight it. And the Asur L'Shtamesh Li'ora. And you cannot use the light of the menorah, the Chanukiah. And why can you not use the light of the Chanukiah? Because you want to make it very clear, right, that it's a ner mitzvah. We call it ner mitzvah. We can only see them, we cannot make use of them.
Is there a prohibition of women doing work during the time?
There's a tradition that women don't work when the Hanukkah menorah is burning. So I wouldn't say a prohibition. Tradition. It's a tradition. You shouldn't, but don't beat it down. Use a good minhag. Right? Right? At least for the first half hour while the mitzvah is.
We don't do work either.
You don't do work either? Good for you.
That's to watch the thing burn or something.
Correct. So people have the minhag not to work altogether. But the stronger minhag is that women don't work. And that's really because women were part of the miracle, and that's because there was the story of Yehudit, or in other stories which took place, there were stories about women who killed their children because they didn't want them to be turned over to the Syrian Greeks. The Brit Milah was outlawed. So if you didn't have if your son got beyond the 8th day, then you either killed it or took a risk, or one way or the other. So there are all kinds of heroic stories that take place in the pre-Hanukkah history of the Jewish people. You have to remember the Hashmonaim, Yehuda Maccabee, and Matisyahu are really revolutionaries. They were the ones who stood out. Thank goodness for Jewish history, they did. But at any rate, that's where the custom comes from. But this is more not that we're doing work. This is you cannot do work by the light of the Hanukkah menorah, which today is not so much a problem for us because we have so much ambient lighting, fluorescent lighting, LEDs, regular incandescent lighting. You don't really appreciate it, right? You don't really need the shamash. Okay, the shamash, by the way, serves really two purposes. The first purpose is it creates a secondary light that you're using. The other purpose for the shamash is to light the candles. Because otherwise you'd end up probably lighting candle 1 to candle 2, candle 2 to candle 3, candle 3 to candle 4, which may or may not be correct, and we'll learn that in the Gemara in a couple of dapim, whether you can light from one candle directly to another. The other choice is you use a match, or to use some kind of small candle that you wouldn't keep burning, but you would need some kind of shamash.
I'm looking at your chart and I see the others even say that there's no kedusha to the candles, and he doesn't say the kedusha. He just says ein lazalzel, and it's like they shimush b'neirot. Right. So I don't know what he is.
What does he mean to say? What he means to say there is it's hard to define what the kedusha of the candles are. What does that mean? How do you understand the kedusha of Hanukkah candles? What is? I mean, I can. You talk about the kedusha of a Sefer Torah. I understand the kedusha of a Sefer Torah. I understand the kedusha of a Beis Hamikdash. I understand the kedusha of Shabbat. There's a sanctity in time. But what does kedusha of the candle means, of the light? In fact, it's very ethereal. Shabbat has a period of time. Beit Mikdash has a locus. Shul has a location. Sefer Torah I can touch. It's real. I cannot. We talk about Tumah and Tahara, right? The things of Kodesh, Karbanot. So what does it mean?
Commemoration of the nes.
Right. So what is? Because otherwise, what does it really mean?
This is
right.
The nes.
The candle is not kadosh. The 44 candles you get in the box do not have holiness. It's the fire, it's the light that's emitted. It's the reaction that is giving off light that has kedusha. What does that mean? So that's why Steinsaltz kind of writes in a funny kind of way. He doesn't say kedusha. He used the term ach ein lezalzel b'mitzvot aydei shimush b'neirot. We shouldn't denigrate the sanctity or the mitzvah by using the neirot. So the sanctity itself is a negative kind of act. We don't misuse. We don't use them for any purpose. So what do you use them for? Use them to produce light, not to use the light.
Right.
Right? So it sounds like this, but that's what the kedusha means. So I think that's why Steinsaltz wrote it in that kind of funny way. Now, so at any rate, so this is the third opinion, and this opinion of Rav, which is said in the name of Rav or of Masna, is the opinion that we do follow. So really, practically speaking, if you did not have any other kind of oil, you could use any oil that you wanted to use. All right. I don't know what kinds of grades of oil they use. I notice sometimes in Eretz Yisrael I've seen where they use olive oil. They say it's not for human consumption. The olive oil that they produce for lighting candles. I don't know what that means.
They're now gelling the olive oil by combining it with paraffin to make it into a gel.
Right, I've seen that too. But I've seen it. What I'm saying, I've seen Eretz Yisrael where they sell olive oil for lighting Shabbos candles, and it says it's not for human consumption. So I'm not sure what that means. It may have pesticides.
When you do olive oil or any oil, like the first press is a virgin,
right?
And then because you just press it out, then you get the oil inside. You can't get it out, so they use solvents.
Correct. So the
solvents mainly.
Maybe the solvents are there, right?
Not the,
right.
Correct. The canola oil they use solvents, and then they evaporate off the solvents, and they're left with the oil.
Could be.
They use, but you guess you use food grade solvents. Right?
Good.
Right?
Someone told me. Maybe someone wants to research this. Someone told me that people use the esrog to make like esrog whiskey or esrog jelly or something like that. Someone told me that they really could pound these things with a lot more pesticides because they're not meant for human consumption. Someone want to find out if that's really true. Or that's just simply a nasty rumor that's going around. No, I'm saying it would make sense.
I don't know. You take the cost of one etrog, because you can say an etrog is $40. You just say.
Correct. So I'm saying not you and me. I'm talking about the archers. The archers.
They figure stuff for consumption.
Right. So I believe that there are certain rules. I'm quite sure there are certain rules even with fruits and vegetables that you can't smack them with pesticides, whatever they use today, between a certain time and the fruit is picked. So it should break down on the fruit. So I don't know. So let me know before my son-in-law makes more of his as his whiskey from the mix it with vodka.
Could eat it.
Correct.
It is a food.
It is a food.
Just because we don't, but we could.
But it's not meant for consumption.
Definitely after.
Yeah, people use it.
Anyway, so someone, if you find out, let me know, please. If not, we'll just go on our merry way. Okay. And anyways, so these are the three opinions, and as I told you, the last opinion is the one we follow. And look what happens here. Amru Rabbanan Kamei Diabayim Mishmei Rav Yirmiyah V'lo Kiblei. So who is this last opinion? Did I skip a line?
I think maybe.
Okay, I'm Rav Yirmiyah. My time of the Rav. Kasavar Kofsein Zakuk La V'Yasur L'Shtamesh Liora. Maybe I didn't read that. So this is really the reason Rav Yirmiyah says for the third opinion, which is Rav's opinion, that says that you can use cruddy oil and you use cruddy wicks on Shabbos and weekday for Hanukkah candles, is because if it goes out, you don't have to relight it, and you can't read by the light of the menorah of the Chanukiah, so therefore you don't care if it flickers or goes out and so forth, or you won't adjust it. So the Gemara now says, Amru Rabbanan Kamei Diabayim Mishmei Rav Yirmiyah V'lo Kiblei. So the Chachamim said over Rav Yirmiyah's explanation for Rav, which is what the explanation makes sense, to Abaye, and he didn't accept it. In other words, he didn't sit right with him. That was the reason. So Kiasa Rabbanan. Kiasa and Ravin, when Ravin comes from Eretz Yisrael, and we've talked about this a number of times, that Ravin and one or two other, Rav Dimi, for example, travel back and forth from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel. And when they show up, it's like when the mail ship would pull in, and he would bring all the news that they heard from Rabbi Yochanan, because Rabbi Yochanan was the big Rosh Yeshiva. So when Ravin came, the Chachamim went to Agbaye, and they said the same thing again. Kamru Rabbana Kamei Dabayim Mishmei Rav Yochanan. They said the name of Rav Yochanan. They said, "Ooh, Rav Yochanan said it. It must be true." V'kiblei, and he accepted it. So when they told him the first time in the name of Rabbi Yirmiyah, he said, "Nah, it can't be." When they said Rav Yochanan, that already made an impression upon him. So you see, it's not what you know; it's who you know. So Amr, and he said, and Rabbi said, "Izakoi gemirno l'shmaita meikar." He said, if I were zeicha, if I were worthy, I would have really learned this statement or this teaching from the beginning. So in other words, Rabbi is basically saying, had I really known what this was, that it was said by Rav Yochanan, and really true, it's too bad I didn't know this years ago, so to speak. Too bad I only learned this now. So the Gemara says, wait, for Hagamra. But he learned it now. What's the big deal whether you learned it now or you learned it 10 years before? So the Gemara says, Nafkamina legirsa the yinkasa. So the difference is, girsa the yinkasa means what you learn as a kid stays with you much longer, right? We all agree with that? As we get older, we all appreciate that, correct? The truth is, when people get older and dementia sets in, the top parts of the brain become befuddled, and what many times happens, memories from the past suddenly wiggle out. When my mother-in-law got old, she would tell us stories from Munkach that were often garbled, but stories she was from Munkach, she was a little child, she left Munkach when she was 4 or 5, but things that we had no idea, we had never heard before. Right, and that's because when the top parts of the brain, the newer parts of the brain become confused, they tend to uncover the brain. The brain tends to pull out the memories from further down. So when people get older, sometimes you hear them, they start talking back languages that they only talked as a youth, right? Yiddish or Hungarian or something, because those are the early things that are put down. So we don't really understand how memory works. It's very, very complex. But anyways, Girsa the Yinkasa is the first things you learn. It's not just that they're less complex. When you learned them, they were complex. When they taught you the multiplication tables, you thought that was the end of the world. And you learned how to write script, but you never thought you'd get beyond the letter Z. Okay, and of course they don't teach script anymore because kids are just keyboarding and pounding on their little pads. They don't teach script anymore. They don't teach it anymore. They don't teach cursive anymore. It's gone. My poor grade 3 teacher's turning over in her grave. She spent a lot of time with us.
So what do you do when you take notes?
They take notes, the mixture of block letters on computers. It's not stressed the way it is. I don't know if they don't teach it at all. They don't teach the way they taught it. I don't know. When I was a kid, you were a kid.
You have to write a check. You have to sign a check.
What check?
X. Who writes checks?
Who writes checks today?
You write a rent check. I don't know.
No.
That's your signature. Your signature can be anything you want it to be.
You pay online. You pay an e-payment. Who's going to send a check to?
Electronic signatures. File online. It's a new world, Archie. You and I were the old timers. The world is passing us by. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the new education. Okay, you know what? There's a niche for you. You can open up a school to teach handwriting. Okay. I'm sure they teach some of it, but it's not the stress like it used to be. So if you watch the way kids write, they write in tens. It's not the script.
They write. I mean, I'm trying to think.
They write. It's a mix of block letters.
They write, but they write like in
block letters. Think for a moment. I don't want to get too far off the topic here about writing. When you write Hebrew script, it's not cursive that every letter is connected. It's the letters. It's Hebrew cursive. Now the Hebrew cursive is written, so really the letters can be connected.
Right.
That's why the Hebrew cursive is written, so that really when you pick your pen up, you're just connecting one to the other. Right? That's why hey is like this, because you hey. Right. Shin is like the E, not your mic making an E, but it's a shin because it comes around. But the bottom line is you're really picking your pen off the page. I don't want to get too far into the topic here, except to say that what you learned as a kid will stay with you forever. Your cursive will be with you for a long period of time, so don't worry. That's the last thing that's going to go, Archie. Okay, so, but this is Girsa. In other words, the Girsa, the Yinkasa, Rashi says, Miskayim yoter mishel zikna. This stays longer than what you study when you're older. By the way, this is becoming less and less important because it's not important today what you know. It's important how you think, how you can apply. Right? What you want to know, you look up on Google. Right? You don't need to know this. How many people know phone numbers? Most phone numbers you probably don't know anymore because they're somewhere in some kind of memory on your smartphone or your home phone, wherever it is. Okay, let's go onwards. So therefore the nafkamina for poor Abaye, who only learned it when he heard it in the name of Rav Yochanan, was he missed out on this not being part of his Girsa the Yinkasa. So it's not clear that the difference between hearing it in the name of Rav Yirmiyah and the name of Rav Yochanan was between being a young lad and being much older. But nonetheless, the younger you are, the more it gets impressed into the lower levels of your memory. Okay. Okay, so now the Gemara has one final question on this. The Gemara says, "V'kavsa ein zakuk la." So we're continuing now. According to this last opinion, which I told you we follow, we agree to. First of all, you cannot use the menorah, the Chanukiah, and if it goes out, kavsa ein zakuk la. You don't have to run back to relight it. It's a good thing to do so. You should light it, but if it went out, you're not the yom mitzvah biyotze if it had the potential. So the Gemara says, Raminhu, we have a question. And here's where we begin introducing the story of Hanukkah. Usually, as you notice, when they introduce material, it tends to come in a back door. Right? The Gemara never tends to walk in a straight line. So first, how do we introduce Hanukkah so far? We just talked about the wicks and the oils.
Right.
We're really relating it to Shabbat or Beis HaMikdash. Now the Gemara says, if it goes out, you don't have to relight this. The Gemara says, we'll ask you the question. We haven't even given you the source for this question, but it says, Mishet Raminhu Mitzvata. What is the time for lighting the Hanukkah candles? Mishet Teshka Chama Achitichla Rego Menashuk. The time for lighting Hanukkah candles, and it's going to come up a little bit later in the Gemara again, it's really taken from Masechet Sofrim and other places, is from Shkiat HaChama, from sunset, until Tichla Regel Menashuk, until the time that people are no longer...
Gone home from the shuk.
People have gone home from the shuk, which is, when was that?
My Zmanim calendars don't have this particular time.
They don't have it actually. That's where the truth is really, what is the time for lighting Hanukkah candles? Well, just mention it very briefly now, because people think it's when it gets dark. It's really not when it gets dark. It's sometime after Mishet Tishka Chama.
Probably only 40 minutes.
Right. It's even less than 40 minutes.
I would say.
Right.
So
in other words, they used to say in New York when I was a kid, it was 15 minutes after sundown, which is much earlier than it gets dark. Tichla Regel Menashuk is a different kind of time. Today, the Tichla Regel Menashuk is until midnight, especially if it's December and the stores are open late before the holiday season.
Right.
The malls stay open until 11 o'clock.
So why didn't this time
become stuck?
Get stuck as like something that we see all the time in our Zmanim thing, like we see Mishiyakir, we see Zman Krishma.
So the answer is Mishiyakir changes also based upon location, and Ben HaShmoshut also changes on location. Ben HaShmoshut is much shorter in Israel than it is here in North America.
But the calendar,
you see it gets shorter. You see how quickly it gets dark.
The calendar is calculated for location.
And the calendar is calculated for the location. What I'm saying is, for example, here in Toronto, the calendars here say, I don't say the calendars here, but this shul, for example, says that Mishiyakir is from the time an hour before sunrise. Right, that's the earliest time that we have, and we put in the shul calendars to make the bracha v'talis and tefillin. Right? I don't know, when I grew up as a kid in New York, it was 45 minutes before sunrise. That's because sunrise actually was not as late as it is, so there wasn't a push to kind of squeeze the time out. So, but I'm saying, so it does vary by location. It also...
But what I'm saying is, this particular time, until they came home from the shuk, it's not a...
It's not a black and white time?
Yes, that's what
No time is black and white time. No time is a black and white. The only time it's going to be black and white time is sunset and sunrise. You can either see it or don't see it, right?
Don't we know Shkia is...
That's what I said. Sunrise is sunset is Shkia, sunrise is Richa. Those times are set. You can't fool with that time.
They're clear in the sense.
Right, they're clear. Now the truth is, it is clear and it's not clear, because we say the time is for a yishuv, for a city. I'm going to bet if you're on the top of the hill of Thorn Hill, wherever that hill actually may be, it'll be a couple of seconds different than if you're bottom in the valley, down at, I don't know, somewhere in the Humber Valley.
Sure.
Okay, so because one is higher, one is lower. The answer is, yeah, but we kind of say that's the time for the whole area. But those times don't change. The amount that what changes really is how you calculate all the other times. How do you calculate 3 or 4 hours? And from that point, do you calculate it from there? Do you calculate it from Malos HaShachar? How do you calculate the day? Midday is also going to be fairly simple. You can't fool with midday. It's between the halfway point of sunrise and sunset. And whatever midday is going to be midnight. It's going to be the exact opposite place.
Right.
So midday, midnight, sunrise and sunset are the same. The question really becomes all the other times. When is actually Tzeisa Kochavim?
You can see.
Maybe you can see. You can't see anything. You can't even see stars in the city. You see planets. You see planets. You're seeing Venus and Saturn and Jupiter. They're bigger and much brighter. Those are not the three. When you walk out of shul and you say, "Oh, I see 3 stars," those are probably planets. Maybe you'll see 1 star or 2 stars like the North Star or Arcturus, and that's about it, because of all the haze. So what does that mean? The stars aren't there? You got to wait till you see 3 stars?
Of course,
So the answer is 3 stars is this kind of time that they used to estimate. So then the question becomes, how do you estimate it? So once again, it depends sometimes on the mitzvah. Is it a rabbinic mitzvah? It's like the end of a tainus, which is a rabbinic tainus, or is it really Shabbat? Is it Shabbat? So the question is, there are different opinions. Rabbeinu Tam, 40 minutes. Right, okay. But that's where it gets a little hazy. So the fact that Tichla Regem and Ashuk is going to depend on your marketplace as well. Right? So all I'm saying is that this mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles is not what many people think, that it's when it gets dark, like Shabbat is over. It's not. It's actually before.
Yeah.
It's actually before. The question is, that's a whole discussion. Is it 20 minutes after sunset, 15 minutes after sunset? 15 minutes probably is too short here. A half hour after sunset, it surely is a half hour after sunset, regardless of whether that's already Seisa Kochavim. So that's the time that you can start to light. And you can light as far when? Until Tichla Regem and Ashuk. When does Tichla Regem and Ashuk?
Midnight.
Yeah, in this country, midnight. Rav Soloveitchik used to say there were 2 times for Tichla Regem and Ashuk. He used to say the time from when people would start going home until they went home for dinner. And then about 7 o'clock would start again, the next Regem and Ashuk. Because people go home and then they go out shopping. But it really is. You can light. People are driving all around. Look out where you live on small streets. I back onto Hilda. Now, there are no trucks on Hilda, but there's cars. The cars are going by till about 11 o'clock, fairly reasonably regularly.
Yeah, but when they were talking, I mean, okay, halacha can evolve. When these people were talking,
they're
saying, as soon as it starts getting dark,
and
people start going home.
Right.
I mean, that's it, right? So
what does that mean?
We have lights, or we have...
Correct. So when does it start to get dark? When the sun goes down. What do we call twilight?
Yeah, exactly.
So the period of time here that we're talking about, and this, by the way, this is really where the half hour tends to come about, says, you see, what is the time period? The time period is Mishatishka Rei Chachama, when sunset, from after sunset, which is not clear to us how much after sunset, sometime after sunset when it starts to get dark, until people are in the marketplace, until the feet are finished from walking in the marketplace. And actually the Gemara is going to discuss that, so we don't want to give away too much of the coming attractions. The Gemara is going to say it's until the last business people go home. Who were the last people? They were the Tardamoy. The Tardamoyans had the monopoly on firewood. That was the last thing that people picked up on the way home. Right? It's like when you go shopping in Sobeys. What's the last thing that you buy? Probably ice cream or milk. Your perishables, right? Or your tomatoes. You don't want the tomatoes in the bottom of the shopping cart. But probably the perishables. The same way, the last thing people would buy would be the firewood. And the firewood, when those guys went home, that was it. People had stopped shopping. The marketplace closed down.
Why did they buy firewood last?
It was probably the heaviest to schlep home, I would imagine. I don't know. You want to carry a firewood, you're carrying a little spices, a little vegetables, a little this, a little that, whatever. But those were the last people, right? Right. The Gemara says those were the last merchants to leave. The Tardamoy, and apparently they had the monopoly on the firewood. So that was it. When they went home, when they closed up shop, that was it. Nobody was around. So that probably was a fairly short period of time. So the Gemara thinks, let's come back to our Gemara now. The Gemara thinks that what this means is this is the period of time that the candles have to be burnt. Have to burn for. That's what the Gemara's Havamino at this point is. And that's why the Gemara's question, V'raminu, mitzvata, the mitzvah of Chanukah candles, mishatishka chama, from the sunset until Hachitich L'regum and Ashuk. My love, does this not mean the kavsa hadar matlik lay, that you have to, the candles have to burn this amount of length of time from right after sunset until people leave the marketplace? Right? It's like saying, when would the marketplace close down? Probably like the time Shabbos is over. Shabbos is over. It's really dark. After that, it would be, so whatever it would be, that's about a half. So it has to burn that period of time. And if it goes out before, you have to relight it. So the Gemara says, which is a kasha on who? It's a kasha on Rav. Kasha and Rav and all these people we just mentioned on this page, the third opinion, and Rav Yirmiyah and Rav Yochanan, that Kafse and Zakik lost. The Gemara says, no, lo, the ilo adlik madlik. So it means, first of all, it means that if they didn't light it, you can light it until the time is over for people leaving the marketplace. Not that this is, if it goes out, you have to relight it during this time period. Right? But it means that this is the time period when you should be starting to light the menorah. You should light the menorah during the period of time from after sunset until people finish walking in the marketplace, which is halachically what we say today, except this time period is until midnight. You can light the menorah, your Chanukiah, until when? Until 11, 12 o'clock at night. Right? Still, people are still out there, because what's the whole purpose of the mitzvah of Neirut Chanukah? Pirsumei Nisa. Someone should see it. Someone should be out there. If nobody's out there, then you're really not going to do Pirsumei Nisa. Then Pirsumei Nisa becomes for yourself. We'll talk about whether Pirsumei Nisa is for yourself as well. I'm saying, but this is the ideal time. So not that if it goes out during this period of time, you have to relight it. There's a time period you have to light it. But if it went out, everybody lives happily ever after. That's what the Gemara says. So lo, dilo adlik, madlik. If you didn't light it, by then, you can light it until the point of when people are still in the marketplace. V'inami, another answer the Gemara says, v'inami l'shiura. The other reason is for the amount of time that from between sunset until the end of the people in the marketplace, that's the amount of time the candle has to be lit. It's not giving you a start exact time and an end exact time. It's giving you a length of time. Like saying going from a shear, like saying the amount of time it takes you to go from Teferi to Tzipori, which is a mill. Okay, which the Gemara says in a different place. It's telling you what a mill is.
So this is a big length of time.
That's such a big length of time. In those days,
today it's an obscene length of time.
Right, so that's what it means. It's giving you the shear. The second answer is giving the shear based upon what it was in those days.
Then, exactly.
So it doesn't even apply today at all.
Correct. That's right. Right. Or it's actually telling what it's telling you. The first answer says this is the time period when you can light it, which does apply to us today.
Right.
And the second thing is it's telling you the amount of time it has to burn based upon the amount of time back in the day.
But
right.
it can't mean that because it doesn't mean that today.
You'd need to have 4 hours worth of light or 6 hours worth of light in your menorah. Correct. That's
correct.
Right.
So which nobody has.
Correct. So that's correct. So that's you'd have to say that's just giving you the time period based upon those days when it was. The same way today, the Gemara says when it's talking about a mill, it says the length of time, the length of area from Tveria to Tveria to Tzipori, which is a mill.
What's a mill? That doesn't
A mill.
sound like enough.
Mill's like a
I know, but I
mile,
think from Tveria to Tzipori is further than that. I'm trying to think.
I don't want to get into whether it is or it isn't, but the Gemara felt now it may have been the Tzipori of that time.
Maybe.
So what if Tzipori moves? What if the road moves? What if the road doesn't go straight anymore? The road twists and turns. Does that mean that suddenly mill has gotten longer? No, it's telling you what it was in those days.
Okay.
Okay. But it means, but once again, coming back to our application, it means that you don't. It means that you don't. If it does go out, you do not need to relight it. Halachically speaking, you should relight it.
The one says the opinion of Rav is kafta ein zakut.
Correct. If it goes out, you're not responsible.
Yeah.
As long as you set up the situation that it had the potential to light and burn, if something happened to it, well.
But what it is saying is that in those days, right, the shear, the minimum length of time that it should be lighting is from
sunset
here or whatever till people come home from the market.
Right, which is about a half hour. Which tends to be about a half hour. It's about a half hour, yes.
Once it's dark.
Once it starts getting dark, really, then it's time to hang around.
Okay.
I want you to just calculate in your mind the way we do Shabbos. And please don't hold me to make this exact, but the way we do Shabbos is Shabbos tends to be over about an hour after Lichbenchen. Would you agree to that?
Yes.
Right? Because Lichbenchen is moved up 20 minutes or 18 minutes before sunset, and then we're doing 40 minutes or 42 minutes afterwards. So the bottom line is, if you're going to finish Shabbos an hour after you light candles, we're now coming. No more early Shabbos is coming up soon. So what we're really saying is between sunset and Oish Shabbos is 40 minutes,
Correct.
42 minutes. Well, that's about the time. What we're saying now, Mishatishka Chamu, we said is about 15 minutes after sunset until it gets really dark from the marketplace.
That's why they say those candles in the box are really not according to the shear.
The 44.
Yes.
Little ones,
Yeah.
other ones.
Why? Because the more
those don't have the shear.
Not for Shabbos.
no,
The whole week?
Oh wait.
no, they do have it. They do. The problem is the more candles you light, the further you go into the Chag, the more internal heat they made and melt each other.
Oh.
And if you have especially a menorah, which the candles are tight, they tend to burn quicker.
Them further apart.
So they do last like 30 minutes. Those
You know
guys?
what? You have a project. You're going to let us know. Everybody, okay? We're going to come next week and we're going to light the menorah. We'll light the menorah.
Which ones are you talking about?
I now get the gelled oil.
Right, correct. The breakaways. Yeah.
It's so simple.
I'm the old-fashioned.
Okay, it's a new world. There we go.
I think all
Your
of
kids
it-
won't even remember 44 candles.
Of course not. The blue box, or whatever it was.
Ay, ay,
Use
ay.
oil. Vicks.
I'll tell you, when I was a young lad and I first started my first position, I told you it was Branford. One of the things the rabbi did was he would deliver candles to all the balavatim. There was 100 families. And the week or so before Hanukkah, 2 weeks before, you schlep around and deliver candles. That way you got to know your parishioners. It was actually a very clever idea. And yeah, but that was it. Those were the way candles the way they were. Okay, anyways, today's all kinds of newfangled things. Okay, let's do 5 more minutes here. So this was really, as a result, we paskin that you don't use the oil of the menorah. You don't have to relight the menorah, and you cannot use the burning of the light of the Hanukkah menorah on any night. Correct, which is how we paskin. Okay, let's do a short piece, and then we'll look at the handout that we gave you. So until the people are out of the marketplace, Yad Kama, Sama Rabba Barachana Am Rav Yochanan. This is now bringing it down a little further time. Rav Yochanan Ad the Kalya Regla the Tarmadoi. The Tarmadoi. These are the Tarmadois, right? This is the name of the people who would collect the wood, and they would go out there. They collect the wood. They'd stay in the shuk until everybody went home, and they would begin to light the fires. I guess they were the last people in the marketplace, so Rashi says, because people would realize they need firewood when at night.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Right? You need food all day, so you tend to go shopping in the marketplace for lunch and dinner, right? But you only realize that you suddenly are running out of firewood or kindling wood when you begin to light the fire. Now, wood was available all over, but apparently these guys were the ones who had the little.
Well, somebody has to go and cut it.
You buy the firewood
Right.
first, then you schlep it around the whole market.
Correct. So Rashi says, I'm gonna just correct myself a little bit. Rashi says they would be malakte eitzim dakim. They would collect the little kindling wood. I guess it was easy to get big pieces of lumber. Anyone could cut that down, and it was lying all around. This is a society which had a lot of empty forests that were unclaimed, or at least trees or wood. But when it comes to kindling wood, you had to have the right kindling wood that was dried sufficiently in order to be able to catch. So they were the people who sold the matches. They sold the lighting material. Think of this as the guys who sell the charcoal briquettes or the.
Think of no matches. First of all, let's think of a society with no matches.
Correct. That's why they had to keep a fire going.
Or something.
Right. Okay, let's come to do this handout page that I gave you. This is taken from Daf Digest, okay? So this is the piece we just did about Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Yirmiyah said, what's the reason for this? This is the top half of the page. What's the reason for Rav's determination that he says you cannot, if it goes out, you have to light it, and you can't use the menorah? So Rav holds that if the Hanukkah candles were extinguished, one need not occupy himself with rekindling them, and he holds that it's forbidden to derive benefit from the light of the Hanukkah candles. This is what we did. The great majority of poskim rule that it's forbidden to benefit from the light of the Hanukkah candles. However, they disagree on the scope of the prohibition, and they're here the broad categories. This is important because we poskim like this. So what does this mean? First of all, prohibition of any usage. The Ritva deduces from the upcoming Gemara that states it's forbidden to count money by the light of the Hanukkah candles, that any usage is prohibited, even temporary or momentary usage is not allowed. The Gemara is going to talk about not counting by the light of the menorah. It's going to say that's a denigration of the light. It's going to talk about different mitzvahs and bizui mitzvah. He does not appear to permit any usage at all, even if temporary and even if it's not irreverent. So even just to count, the small, you want just to look at a small word, you couldn't even look based upon the menorah.
Read the Chumash.
Correct. Or not even look up which parak it is.
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's an hey or an aleph or an o or an a or something. In the second opinion, Ramban, Rashba, Ran, and others opine similarly. This appears to be the opinion of the Rambam, and the Bach of Yol Circus notes this opinion of other Rishonim as well. The Rashba and the Ran explain that the reason why no usage is permissible is that the interdiction is based upon a correlation between the Hanukkah lighting and the lighting of the menorah in the temple. The Rashba adds an additional reason that usage of the mitzvah is irreverent and derisive. So all of these say you can use no prohibition. You cannot use any use of the menorah at all, the light of the menorah. Forbidden, out, all wrong. Second opinion, prohibition of non-temporary or demeaning momentary usage. The Rosh holds holds, there's a second opinion, that non-temporary usage is forbidden, because observers will say that by virtue of the fact the person is utilizing the Hanukkah lights, it must be they're not candles of a mitzvah, not near mitzvah. However, temporary usage would be prohibited only when it debases the mitzvah, such as counting money to the light of the Hanukkah candles, because the person must bring his hands close to the candles to be able to discern the coins. Thus, according to the Rosh, it would appear that the base of the prohibition is to prevent misperceptions of the person's intent, and thereby diminish the promulgation of the miracle of Hanukkah. As well, the prohibition is intended to prevent the demeaning of the mitzvah. So consequently, if you were using something we're not debasing, let's say you want to see what page number in the Gemara it is, you want to find out, should you be learning Chaf Aleph or Dav Chaf? Chaf Aleph or Chaf Bet? And you took the menorah and put it up to the Hanukkah candles and you got a glimpse from the light, that would be okay. That's not wrong according to the Rosh. Okay, next opinion. Prohibition of profane usage. The Baal HaMor infers from the upcoming Gemara that states it's forbidden to count money by the light of the Hanukkah candles, that only usage of a profane nature is unacceptable. Yet to use the candlelight for a usage of mitzvah would be allowed. Following this view, the Baal HaMor permits eating the Shabbos meal or learning to the candlelight of the Hanukkah candles. That's the Baal HaMor's opinion. I don't think we really follow this. The authorities disagree as whether the Baal HaMor would permit mitzvah usage even in a non-temporary fashion or only in a temporary manner. Let's say you're really eating. There's enough to eat, but you're not quite sure about if the thing on your plate is walking or not walking. So you want to find out. Actually, probably is the meaning, okay? But let's say you don't want to know what bracha it is.
But of course today this is all totally irrelevant.
It could be irrelevant. Let's say you had a blackout. Let's say you had a blackout in the room, or let's say the lights. I don't know where you light your menorahs of Hanukkah, but we tend to light them on our front window.
Right.
Okay, and then we walk out of the room. We usually turn the lights down. So what happens if you walk into that room and you want to see on a bookshelf, you want to pull, let's say, a sefer off the wall. You want to make sure
I leave the lights on because at Chas v'Shalom you want to see if there's a fire or something.
We turn them out so that they look nicely outside for Pesui Niso. Because people can't see from the outside in if all they see is the lights in your living room or dining room.
They look beautiful.
So actually, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying it's not unreasonable. So let's say you walk in. I want to see. Is this a chumash or a siddur? It's sitting on the shelf. Is this a Rashba or a Ritva? Is it a Tanakh or is it a Torah? So it's not unreasonable that I would be using the lights briefly. According to the Baal HaMor, it's not a problem. In application, here we come to the finale. This is it. What to do at home. In the Shulchan Aruch quotes two opinions. First, he presents without contestation, fancy words, the view that no usage at all is permitted, even temporary usage for mitzvah. Then he presents that there are those who hold it's permitted to use the candlelight for a mitzvah. Under these conditions, the halacha follows the first opinion stated without contestation, which means you shouldn't really use it all. So preferably, if you're going to look on the bookshelf to go see if it's a chumash or a siddur, take out your little handy-dandy smartphone and put on the torch version that you can see it. There you go. Put the light back on. Okay, it's okay. It's fine. Okay. So that really takes us back to that, and that will really take us up to where we're going to stop for today. And next time we learn is really going to be about Hanukkah. Now, the next time is going to be, next Monday is Labor Day.
17.
Right, so I'm going to make the executive decision that we're not going to learn on the Yontif, on the holiday. Now, what happens the week after that? I have to remember that.